Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very proud to be here to present the experience of CNDC-CC, the Consiglio Nazionale dei Dottori Commercialisti e degli Esperti Contabili, on the translation of standards. Just a short introduction. Oh, no, it's too much. Okay, just a short introduction. We're two full-time translators, and there is an internal department to CNDCC. Because we're an internal department, we can also take advantage of the advice of several experts on the different areas of activities for our professionals, which range from accounting to auditing, taxation, anti-money laundering, and insolvency, corporate governance. And we also have two CAT tools licenses. Thanks to these resources, we could translate several IFAC standards and guidance and material relevant for the profession. When I was asked to hold this speech now, I considered that the handbook of ISAs and ISQC1 would be the right project to present to you, because in my opinion it really included all the relevant stages that contribute to enhance quality of translation, faithful translation, and also the acceptability for its process. The initial situation was that there were already some translations of parts of ISAs, but they were not faithful translation. Nevertheless, this meant that we had some key terms that were already widespread among professionals, so we wanted to keep the reference to those terms. And we also wanted to keep reference to IFRS's terminology because, as mentioned by Hilde, that is also our case. We are involved in the review of IFRS's translations made by European Commission. So we wanted to be consistent with this terminology, and considering that, as you know, the ISAs are about 800 pages long as a handbook, this means that there is a high risk of inconsistency within the book. So for this purpose, from the perspective of a translator, all these few elements already highlight the need for a CAT tool. And before going on, because I will be making some references to CAT tool, just to make things clear, we're not talking about machine translation. That's not what a CAT tool provides, but we're talking about computer-assisted translation, so the computer assists human translation. Actually, CAT tools are a bit like an empty box at the start. There's no content in it. It's only tools that help the translator, that support translators, but the contents will be put into the CAT tools by the translators themselves. So those will have to be the right contents for the project. Going back to our process, well, people and institutions involved were two translators, two expert staff from CNDCC, a review committee appointed by CNDCC composed of 20 audit and accountancy professionals. The stakeholders and the regulators were involved after in an external review. And then, as Hilde mentioned, also the European Commission reviewed the translation of the ISAs. If I had to choose a picture for our process, I would choose a pyramid. As you can see, translation is not the first stage. The first stage, which is very important, is getting ready, is the preparation for the translation. And time spent on this is really never lost, in my experience. And the more you work on preparation, the better and faster you will translate. And this will facilitate, in turn, the review, the internal and external review, and the update at the end. So actually, the idea of a pyramid here is like the workloads of the process. First stage, as Kelly mentioned, is getting ready is submit a translation request. And to this purpose, I would like to add that it's very useful that the policy requires a review committee to be appointed from the start, because you will need to agree with the review committee on several issues before starting translating. Specifically, the type of translation we want to achieve. If we're talking about standards, probably it will be a faithful translation. There may be some formatting choices that it may be worth to make from the start to save time at the end of the project. You should agree on key terms. It will be probably only a first set of key terms because probably during the translation some more key terms are going to be included in the glossary. And it's worth also to make considerations on the order of translation because, for example, the ISAs were about 36 documents. So there may be consistency or efficiency reason to give a certain priority or give a certain order to those translations. And in our case, quite simply, was also the availability of some experts that were involved in the review that was considered for the translation order. Finally, we get to the translation stage. Consistency is, in my opinion, one of the main requirements while translating standards. And consistency should be considered from different perspectives. The first one is what I referred to before, is consistency with material that has already been translated. In our case, it was former ISAs and the IFRSs. And to this purpose, we have a specific tool provided by CAT Tools, which in my opinion is very important, is the alignment tool. That practically means that you take the previously translated material, you take the original text and the target text, and you match the sentences, a pair of sentences, and these will form translation units. These translation units will be saved or stored in a translation memory, and this translation memory will be available for the translator while performing his translator. Each time that a sentence, he has to translate a sentence that is similar to one that has already been translated. Let's say that the similar concept is about 70%, let's say. That is the one considered by CAT Tools generally. Another reason for ensuring consistency is that more than one translator may be involved in the project. In our case, we were 2, but could be more. So the translation memory is actually shared among translators, and this is important because I can see from the computer what the other translator has already translated so far, especially if a sentence comes to me that is similar to one that she has been translating. So this is really useful to be consistent among translators. And then there is a problem of consistency within the text because often with standards we have repetition of sentences or phrases. And to this purpose, the shared TM, the shared translation memory is still the right CAT tool, and repetition of key terms, as you all know. For this purpose, we have some other CAT tools. One is terminology, which is kind of based like an Excel file where you have the English version of a term and the translated version. And this Excel file is always available for the translator. And a concordance search is another important tool. You actually search throughout the text for all occurrences of a specified term, either in English or in the target language. So you can check that this term was translated consistently every time. All this information may be included in the project settings of a CAT tool, so right from the start. And actually, they can also be used again for other projects. Because I introduced some technical words, I just wanted to make, you know, I'm not a professional accountant, I'm a translator, so these are my sums, my accounts. So, as I said, the alignment and the new translation units together form the translation memory, that is the support for the translators. But not only that, the translator also is supported by terminology and concordance tools. So just to recapitulate. Coming to the experts review, this was the internal review performed by professional auditors and accountants. There were 20. We had 36 documents, more or less. So actually, there were each standard was assigned to 2 reviewers, so that they would very carefully read each and every word of the standards. Of course, the other reviewers were included too in the review. They could and they should make comments. And then at the meetings, all the comments would be shared and considered, and a final version would be approved. At the meetings, translators were involved, so we were always there, so we could provide our linguistic support. We could explain some of the choices we had made while translating, and the expert staff from CNDCC. So the point of this review was that there was really a close cooperation. And then the review with stakeholders, regulator, the Council, and European Commission. Also here we had a very close cooperation, and in fact, as you can see, there were not only the CNDCC expert staff, but also the 2 expert reviewers that had performed the specific review on those standards were included in the meetings with stakeholders and regulator. And also, I would like to add that there is another tool to ensure that the translation memory is updated after amendments are made by the reviewers. And this allows you to have an updated translation memory, and this is very important when you get to the update stage. So when a revised or amended standard is issued, with a CAT tool and with an updated translation memory, it is very easy to make a new translation. Because as you can imagine, all the information are already saved and stored in the translation memory. And the computer, the program, will also show you the differences between the 2 texts, the previous version and the new one. And of course, if some new terms are added, which is often the case with new standards, you can also ensure that these terms are consistently translated with specific tools, as we said before. And this, of course, improves, in my opinion, efficiency and accuracy. Now, this was for the project. And now we would like really to launch this new initiative by IFAC. The idea behind this IFAC Translating Forum is that actually, although we all translate into different languages, we may really have the same problems and issues and doubt while approaching the translation of standards or guidance issued by IFAC. So we would really like to share all these doubts, also to provide useful feedbacks for standard setting bodies on terms that are more difficult to translate or give problems to translators for some reasons. And we may share also useful resources and information on events and so on. The idea here is a bit what also Hilde referred to, that the European Commission, when the translating bodies were translating the ISAs, we were all invited by the European Commission to share the approach. And actually those meetings, I had the pleasure to participate to those with a technical advisor from CNDCC. And those meetings were extremely useful for translators, although we were from all different countries. So your next suggestion, of course, is very welcome for this forum. And technically, how it's going to work, only through a LinkedIn profile, if you have one. Otherwise, it's for no cost. You can set up one and get invited, because it's a closed group, of course. So you can get an invitation and simply join the forum. And it has already been set up. There are already some threads and resources available. This is a screenshot. So the idea with translation, of course, is also cooperation. So I really hope that many of you will want to join this forum and cooperate. Thank you. Special thanks to my colleague Elena Florimo and the head of the international department, Noemi Disegni. Thank you.